What is the biggest frustration for you when watching Hollywood movies regarding the Navy SEALs?
Um, it's going to sound crazy coming from a Navy guy, but I was, as I told you, I was the command that I was at. We started working with everybody, under joint, the U.S. SOCOM, and then Joint Special Operations Command too is a specialized unit that is on the East Coast, and that's where all the elite Tier 1 units work. That's where the ones that we hear about all the time, the Delta Forces and the Dev Group and everybody like that. That's where all the elite people go, and it's an elite command where everybody works together. Um, the SEALs are very good at certain things. And I got a lot of respect, obviously, for my friends in the teams. Um, but what's interesting is we no longer, since the GWAT, the Global War on Terror, that we've had for the last 20 odd years, everybody works with everybody now. It's the craziest thing. I had a very good friend that was in the head of intelligence for what you'd call Delta Force. And what was interesting was he had Air Force people, he had Navy guys, he had everybody integrating into the units all the time. They're cross training all the time. There's way more cooperation than the old days where everybody was very parochial. And so now special operations is really kind of a mix. You still have obviously your traditional units. The Navy is very good at maritime and what they do. Delta is very good at hostage rescue, where we're at, but so is Dev Group. There's not this, there is a much more cooperative training. I remember the one thing that I really learned as a young officer was how capable the other groups were, at what they did. Everybody wants to go in, like if you're going into a situation, you want your Air Force guy there. You want your combat controller there because, man, he can call it in when you need it, and it's just really great. So people really got to respect each other's abilities, and that's been very unique. I would say what makes the United States Special Operations community very different from the rest of the world is I've met special operations personnel from all over the world, and quite frankly, there are some units that are out there that are just physical specimens that are just amazing. I mean, amazing operators. But what they can't do is what the U.S. can do. We can get a call, and within the worst case scenario, 18 hours, we can have people on site anywhere in the world at any time.
Hmm.
We have the logistic capability to do that. And that's something that really no other country has the ability to guarantee. So say, I'll give you a perfect example. New Zealand SAS, excellent operators, really, really good guys. I mean, when my friends would go out and train with them, they'd come back and just go, oh my God, these guys, they beat the hell out of us. But should something happen, New Zealand does not have the capability to get their people anywhere that quickly.
Yeah.
So it's, it's not a question of training. I think around the world, you find most special operations units, caliber wise, or can per man operate very well. We would have guys come from all other units. I remember I went through training with a Finnish special forces officer, and he had to go through buds with us. Here's a highly decorated guy, fought against the Russians, did all sorts of crazy stuff, and yet back then we had an understanding no foreign national could work with us, the Naval Special Warfare Group, unless they went through basic underwater demolition school. It was a very arrogant approach, but it was interesting. So here's this guy at 37 going through training with us. And that's, 37 is not old, but for that, it's pretty impressive that he did that. And he was just a specimen. The guy was just amazing. There were some kids we had from Costa Rican special forces. These guys were just, they went there because their countries paid for the training. And so,
Hmm.
especially on the third world countries, you better not fail. I remember this one kid, Dookie. He was from Costa Rica, and he was doing the underwater breath hold swim, and he passed out underwater because he wouldn't come up because you would fail if you came up and you do it again. And he got such respect from everybody that, he did that. I mean, I remember the instructor literally pulling him up and he's out cold and they're reviving him and he's yelling at us going, you see, this is dedication. This is, it's hilarious, Um, So you got to see, tenacity wise, every culture can produce a similar quality individual, some more so than others. Uh, but what you learned was logistics really is what the difference is. The ability to be able to get people to the point and get them supplied correctly and supported. And that's something that the
Yeah.
U.S. still has a big edge on everybody that way.
When you take that part of it out of it, what special forces group would you say is the most deadly on Earth?
Oh man, you're gonna get me in trouble. Um, as a contractor, once I was out, I tended to use the majority of people I worked with were Army. The majority of people I worked with were what general public would know as Delta Force, and be, their mission is just very different. And most of them come from they're more mature, meaning they're older operators. In SEAL teams, you can go right from high school right in right away,
Hmm.
whereas Army Special Forces, you have to, first go through basic training. I know they had some things where you can go right into Special Forces training, but usually, say a average Navy operator was say, I don't know, 24 to 26. The Delta guys would be late 20s to early 30s, and because they were just more seasoned that way, and they also had to work with a lot more cultures. The Navy's getting a little bit better at this, but naval special warfare is really known for direct action missions, and that's where you go into an area, you do your job, and you get out. Whereas the Army embeds, and they actually learn to work with third world groups, and their their ability to train natives from nothing to effective guerrillas is just incredible. So it's just depending what what we do, but I really do have a lot of friends, in Army Special Forces that I really like. That doesn't mean, yeah, I have to because some of my best friends are my Navy boys, but and they get it, and and most of the guys will agree, with that. Not saying that it's not better or worse. It's just depending on what the job is that you're training for.
Hmm.
I found sometimes the Army has more. Uh, they have more skill sets beyond just direct action. Being able to get in, basically snatch somebody, pull them back, shoot somebody, get out of there, do a quick mission. They can go in, they can recruit, they can, deep cover. Now, that said, as I told you, everybody's starting to work with everybody now. So now there's a lot more cross training of those skills. A lot of the missions that you hear about sometimes are called low visibility missions, where like 2-man, 4-man teams are embedded somewhere and they're doing deep reconnaissance and they're in there. Well, that's involving everybody now, not just Army anymore. It's Navy's doing a lot of work that way as well. So again, it's evolved to the point now where, like I said, for the 20 years that we've been at war, one of the positive things is we have a much more robust special operations community, and everybody works together. Let me just give you a quick the what I talked about Patia Airfield, where my guy John Connor got killed. 7 guys were lying on the field at Patia Airfield and they could not call the Air Force. Their comms were different than the Air Force comms during that time. Like people weren't talking, and that because of Panama, because of just the fiascos that happened with communications and everything. That's what brought about the USOCOM and this tradition. We should all be able to talk to each other. You think something as basic as being able to call for help. You could do that, but they couldn't do that. Guys died on the airfield because they couldn't get medical evacs. During that time. So it's been very interesting. We've learned some very hard lessons, but we've made it much better now.
What happened with John Connor?
He was shot in the head. Came in. It's completely the decision made by the on-site commander, and this is the other thing: the clarity of. Recently it was kind of an uproar here because people don't understand why they did it. But the current administration recently changed the name from Department of Defense back to the Department of War. And that makes a big difference because what they're trying to do is they're trying to send a message saying, listen, Congress, listen, whoever, if you're going to use us in the future, we are a war fighting capacity. War fighting capacity means that if you send us, we're good at one thing. We're good at killing people and breaking things. And that's it. We are not pizza deliverers. We are not, we are not policing. We're not, doing it. We've been misused. The military has been misused horribly since the change. I think it was 1947 when they changed the name to Department of Defense. It just gave this ability to use the military in a way that had never been designed to be used before. And it's been a fiasco. So this administration, by coming back, some people think they're trying to be aggressive or anything. No, they're actually the opposite. They're trying to say, no, you only use us if you need this. And that's why we're changing this back to war, because when you come to us, you're saying what's going on here is risen to that level. And so I think it's a very smart, move on that, because it'll make sense with what I'm about to tell you. So at Patia Airfield, when those guys were given, they were going after a plane. Noriega was the leader of Panama at the time, and he had a jet that they were concerned about, and they didn't want the jet to turn off. And what was it? The term used was they want you to disable. The commander on site got this thing and said, "Hey, disable the aircraft." Now, the easy way to do that would be at the time, and this is just, I remember my master chief telling me this whole thing, very seasoned guy from Vietnam. You put a guy with a 50 cal, a sniper rifle, up on the tower, on the air tower, and any aircraft come through, he can just take it out, shoot the engine. Because they use the word disable and not destroy, the on-site commander was so worried about his ass, worried about whether or not he would, could I get in trouble? He had those guys run down the middle of the airfield. I think it was 14 of them running by themselves at a fully lit airfield, running down to the hangar where the jet was. And they were to slash the tires because they didn't, I don't want to destroy something if I'm only supposed to disable it. So he risked his whole men, and it was a huge scandal, and those guys got killed. And then two average infantrymen from the Panamanian forces hid behind as these guys were approaching the hangar coming in, they hid behind concrete-filled oil cans, and they just caught them in a crossfire and killed 7 of them right away. John was the first one. He was shot in the head and died on that. And so that was a huge fiasco. And also they tried to promote the officer that was in there. It was a huge scandal, and it caused a lot of uproar. But that was the impetus for a lot of the changes that brought about U.S. SOCOM after that, because it was just egregious what happened to those guys, completely unnecessary.
If you guys enjoyed that clip, please do me a huge favor before you go and head over to our Into the Mind podcast official page, where we have the raw, uncut Into the Mind podcast, and hit that subscribe button. And the more subscribers we get, the more incredible guests we can get on the show. I really appreciate you guys for watching. Thank you so much. And I'll see you all real soon.